Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Welcome back, friends. Welcome to another video tutorial by Biology. In this series of videos lecture, we are going to talk about we are going to talk about basic immunology. Okay, not overview, but we are going to talk about basic immunology. What is basic immunology? Basic immunology, inside the basic immunology, we have, these kinds of the system. We have, in the future videos, we are going to talk about the basic immunology means the organ, tissue, B cell, T cell, complement system, all those things which are usually involved in the immunology. Okay, but in step-by-step video lecture. Now this is the first video lecture, and in this first video lecture we are going to talk about the overview of the basic immunology. Okay, that what is actually basic immunology. So basic immunology are actually those things which can contain the basic things of the immune system or basic things of the immunity. So what kind of the basic things they have? They have, B cell, T cells, they have complement system, they have, antigen, antibody, infection, disease, these kinds of the things. These are the basic immunology. But we are going to explain each of the basics in much more detail in the step-by-step videos lecture. Okay, now this is the first video lecture, and in this first video lecture we are going to talk about the overview of the basic immunology. First of all, what is immunology? Immunology is the branch of medical science in which we study the cells. In which we study the immunity. Which we study the immunity or immune system. We call that immunology. Okay, what is immunity? Immunity is actually derived from the Latin words. It is derived from the Latin words, and it from which kinds of the Latin words we call that immunes. Immunes. So it is derived from a Latin word which we call that immunes, and this immunes means what? This immunes means free of burden. Free of burden. Okay, so it means free of burden. Okay, now the immunity or the immune system is that system which are activated inside our body on that time when our body is exposed to pathogen. What is pathogen? Pathogen is any kind of the substance or any kind of the microorganism that have the ability to cause disease. Okay, so then our immune system or immunity will get activated. Okay, now what actually happen inside our body? Inside our body, the infection, how the infection are activated. So for the activation of the infection or for the establishment or the development of the infection, first of all, this pathogen may have the ability to face the surface barrier. Once they are face the surface barrier, once they are, destroy the surface area, so then they will get internalized, and inside the body, then they will cause the infection. But still, infection is not caused because normally we have these two systems are activated. What actually happen? Outside our body, we have the surface barriers. Okay, we have what? We have the surface barrier. So the pathogen must internalize when they face the surface barrier. So in surface barrier, what kind of things we have this? What is actually surface barrier? Surface barrier means those things which are present on the surface of our body. So for example, skin, mucus, degenerative enzymes, sometimes we call that lysozymes. So lysosomes, so these kinds of things are what? These kinds of things are the surface barriers. These things have what? They have the antimicrobial activity. What does it mean? Antimicrobial activity means that they can kill the microorganisms and they are against the microorganisms. So that's why we are called it that this is antimicrobial activity. They have the antimicrobial activity. Now let's suppose there is some accidents occur. So during accident, our skin are rupture or break. Due to this way, our skin is exposed to pathogen. So our body is exposed to pathogen. Now let's suppose this green area representing that the skin is exposed to the pathogen. This pathogen will get internalized. Once the pathogen are get internalized, then what actually happen? After that, this microorganism will activate two kind of the system, and we call that what? We call that innate and this adaptive. Innate, specific, non-specific, means innate or non-specific, and adaptive or acquired and or specific immunity. These two kinds of systems are activated. Okay, this system we also call that they don't have the memory and they have the memory. How? Let me explain. First of all, let's explain this innate. First of all, why? Because first of all, this innate systems are activated. This innate systems, we can obtain it from the inheritance, or we can take it from the parents, okay, through inheritance. And this adaptive or acquired immunity, it is activated on that time when our system, innate system, are failed to recognize this kind of pathogen, and then adaptive immunity are activated. But there are very differences. This immunity will be activated within a second, within a minute, and they takes more times. But they are specific. They are specific against the microorganism. They are non-specific. Any kind of pathogen, if they are get internalized, so this innate immunity will kill it. But sometime if it is failed, so a new system is activated, which is we not take from the inheritance. It is activated naturally inside our body against the specific pathogen, okay. And what actually happens, this innate system or non-specific systems can kill, but if they are not recognized effective, then this one system is activated. But it can take 48 hours, 72 hours, or sometimes it can take 1 week, but it is specific. And time to time it is increased, and it have the high power to kill the pathogen. Let's suppose we have the pathogen baseless species are get internalized and they are ready to cause infection. But before infection, this one system are activated and they can kill this baseless species. But sometimes they are failed. So then a new system is activated that we call that adaptive or acquired immunity. This one systems have what? They have cells, which we usually call that what? Which we usually called B cells and T cells. We are also, talked about the B cell and T cell in some other video lecture in much more detail. So they will activate these two kinds of the cells. B cells are those cells which can, convert it into plasma cell, and let's suppose these systems, they then convert into plasma cells. And after that, this plasma cell will produce a kinds of substance, proteins, or a kinds of protein which we call that immunoglobulin, or we also call it antibody. Now, what is immunoglobulin or antibody? Immunoglobulin or antibody are a kinds of proteins that are activated against the pathogen. And this antibody have the ability to kill the pathogen, sometime alone, sometime by self. But sometime this antibody will just attach, this antibody will just attach to the surface of the pathogen. And once they are attached to the surface of the pathogen, then they are looking tasty for the other cells, which we call it macrophages, dendritic cells. Inshallah, we will also talk the macrophages and dendritic cells in much more detail. Now, then it is engulfed by the dendritic and macrophages kinds of the cells. So this is the adaptive immunity. Okay, so this is a little bit distinguished between the adaptive and the specific immunity. These two systems are, whenever the times are take for a lot, or whenever attempts are take for a lot period of time, so then each systems are work together. Okay, each system are what? Each systems are work together. They are combinedly work together. Okay. Now here one thing that is very important. Our immune system is composed of three main things. That is tissue, different cells, and organ. So let me erase this one portion and much more explain the overview of the basic immunology. So now what actually happened? Our immune system, if we talked about our immune system, so let me write here, let's suppose our immune system, what actually happened? Immune system, or we can write immunity. Let's suppose here I write immunity. Now, our immunity can contain three main things, and these three main things are actually can destroy the cells. Which kind of destroy the microorganism? Which kind of they contain which kind of the system, or which kind of the three main things? So these three main things are the cells. Different kinds of the cells we have. Different cells. We have different kinds of the cells. We call that B cells, T cells, macrophages, dendritic cells. We all call that what? Actually, these cells, I means that these cells are what? These cells are the lymphos means WBC or leukocytes, WBC or leukocytes. Try to remove the spelling mistake by yourself, okay? Leukocytes, or we call it WBC. So these immune system can contain the different cells. On the other hand, these immune systems are also contain organ. Okay, what organ? Bone marrow, this is the organ, and we have thymus, this is the organ. Such organs are usually produce cells which are involved in our immunity. And our immunity, it also contain tissue. Okay, tissue. What does it mean? It means that I explained the surface barrier. On the surface barrier there are some things are present. So this is actually the tissue. Okay, although tissue are some other thing as well. But let's suppose the tissue, or that means the tissue are what? The tissue are the surface barrier. So on the surface barrier there are lysozymes, there are the degenerative enzymes, normal flora. So these things are contain our tissue. Now these three things are what? These three things are the immunity. These three things are are involved in the immunity. And with the help of these three things, what we have? With the help of these three things, they can destroy or kill what? They can kill or destroy the pathogen. There is a difference between disease and infection. So let me a little bit tell you about the disease and infection. Although I define it in my videos lecture, but let me tell you a little bit disease and infection. That what is actually the difference between disease and infection. These two things are very important. A lot of students or a lot of my friends or they mistakes in disease and infection. So what is actually disease and infection? Disease means what? Disease means that when our body don't have normal function, let's suppose kidney, brain, heart, lungs, if such organ don't have the normal function due to the infection, we call that disease. Now, on the other hand, what is infection? Infection, when the microorganisms are get internalized and they are divided and redivided, and due to which the organ are disturbed. Any kind of organ we have, means brain, kidney, lungs. If these organs are disturbed, if the inflammation are occur in each kind of the organ, then we call that it is infection. And due to this infection, the disease is occur. Okay, disease is caused by the infection. And infection is occurred. Infection can cause the disease, and disease is caused by the infection. We can say just like that. Okay, infection caused the disease. That's very important things that you guys need to understand about that. So that's very important. Okay, one thing's more that about our immunity or our immune system. It is designed just like that they can distinguish the self. Let me write. That they can distinguish the self and non-self antigen. Okay, so normally our immune systems are designed naturally. Our immune system are designed to distinguish between the self and non-self antigen. What does it mean? Self antigen are those which is a part of our body, means proteins. We have vitamins, we have hormones. These kinds of things are what? Self antigen, and they are useful for us. On the other hand, we have non-self antigen, means bacteria, euglena, such kind of things are the non-self antigen. So our immunity system are designed to distinguish between them, and our immunity system normally can kill the non-self antigen and prevent the self antigen. So after that, after the self and non-self antigen, what we have some important things about the innate and adaptive immunity. If we discuss a little bit more about the innate immunity, so let me write here again: innate immunity. Innate immunity, or we can say non-specific immunity. Now, if we talked about again this innate and non-specific immunity, so what we have? We have it contain skin mucus and lysosomes. So it contains skin, mucus, lysosomes. What? Skin, mucus, lysozymes. Okay. These lysozymes are what? Actually, these are the chemical mediators, antimicrobial chemical mediator, which we call it lysozymes. So these things, as you are watching this, we also call that this is the first defense line, first line of defense. Now why? We call it first line of defense because first of all, our skin is exposed, or first of all, these microorganisms are facing this one area, which we call it a surface barrier. First of all, they will facing this. That's why we call it first line of defense system. First of all, this one defense system are activated. Once it is exposed, there is cut occurs. So then the second system is activated. Second line of the defense system is activated, which we call it innate or non-specific immunity. This innate or non-specific immunity, they can further contain antibodies. They also not antibodies, they contain some cells, which we call it, okay, they contain what? They contain cells. We call it macrophages. We call that dendritic cells. We have nutrophils, eosinophils, these kinds of the cells. E cells are get activated. So this is the second defense. After that, we have what? We have the third line of the defense system, which we usually call that what? Let me write here, which we usually call that adaptive immunity. Which we usually call that adaptive immunity. So this is the second line of defense system. This is the third line of the defense system. Then this one defense systems are activated. Inside this system, what we have? We have B cells and T cells. What we have? We have B and T cells. B and T cells. Moreover, it also contains antibodies. And we have also plasma cells as well. Actually, the plasma cells can secrete the antibodies. Okay, plasma cells as well. So after that, this one system is activated. Okay, so that's normally, happening inside our body. Then third line of the defense systems are activated. If the third line of the defense system are failed, after that, the infection is activated. That's very important. So the microorganism can facing each of the things. Still, that infection is not activated, but usually we can say that after that, the infection may be activated. Okay, so that's how the infection is activated inside our body. Now, another question that are usually arise in our mind, that's about the pathogenesis. Now, what is actually the pathogenesis? When the pathogen have the ability to cause an infection, when the pathogen have the ability to, perform their life cycle inside the human body and inside the organisms, when they have the ability to perform their life cycle, to complete their life cycle, to, stay a long period of time, and do their mechanism of action, we call that pathogenesis of that organisms. Okay, so these all things are what? These are actually our immunity. Okay, another things that I must tell you in summary what we have, if I discuss the summary of our host defense, so what we have, let me erase this one portion. So, okay, in summary, what we have, we can say that our host defense, if we talked about our host defense, so let me once again tell the whole story. So if we talked about our host defense system, means our host defense. So what we talked in our host defense? In our host defense, we talked two types of the system. Which kind of the system? Two types of the system we talked to. So the first system that we talked to, this is about the, innate. Innate immunity. And on the second hand, what we talked adaptive. Or we also call that specific. Okay. This innate immunity, in innate immunity, what we talked, you know, a little bit about, you know, we talked that our innate immunity, you know, it can contain what? Further, our innate immunity can contain further three more things. Which kind of the three more things that they contain? They contain cell tissue. So let me write. They contain cell tissue. They contain surface barrier, physical surface barrier, barriers, and they also, you know, contain what? They also contain chemical mediators, chemical mediators. So these kinds of the things contain, you know, these three things are actually involved the innate immunity. In cell tissue, what we have? In this cell tissue, we have different kinds of the cells are involved. Means amino cells are involved, which we call that, you know, dendritic cell, dendritic cells. We have granelucytes, granelucytes means neutrophils, those cells which have the granules that are act as enzymes. We have neutrophils, esenophils. So these kinds of the things are what? These kinds of the things are the granelucytes. Okay, so we have granelucytes. We have, you know, macrophages cells, macrophages, and natural killer cell, natural killer cells. So these kinds of the things are what? These are the actually cell tissue, or we can say these kinds of the, you know, amino cells as well. Now next we have the surface barrier. In surface barrier, what we have in surface barrier means this surface barrier are involved skin, mucus. So let me write skin, mucus, skin and mucus. Okay, so this involves what? This involves skin and mucus. Now this chemical mediators is involved what? We have defensinse, defensinse chemical. We have you know, lysozymes chemical. So these kinds of the chemicals are involved what? These are kind of the chemical are involved in the chemical mediator. So these all things are what? They are the actually innate immunity. Now on the other hand, if we talked about the adaptive, so inside the adaptive system, what we have some other things are activated. In adaptive immunity, we have the same things, but let me tell you a little bit differentiate this adaptive. In an adaptive system, we have also the cell tissue. So let me write the cell tissue. So here, you know, also the cell tissues are involved. This adaptive immunity have what? This adaptive immunity have the memory, and they have also what? They have also, you know, known and self. They have known and self antigen ability. Means means what does it mean? It means that this system have the ability to distinguish between the non and you know, the self and non-self antigen as well. So inside the cell tissue means, if we talked about the adaptive immunity, so inside the cell tissue, what kind of the cell tissue are involved? So in the adaptive system, immuno system, we have two kinds of the cell involved. We call that B cells and T cells. In each of the system, some of them are involved in inflammation, some of them are involved in oppsonization, inflammation, cell coorpuration. We have, you know, resident responders. Okay, so which kind of the things we have? These two things, as you are watching, these two things. These two things are involved in what? These two things are involved in oppsonization. Now, what is oppsonization? Oppsonization is that phenomena in which when the antigen, let's suppose this is the antigen, when the antigen is, it is tagged. When the antigen is tagged with what? When the antigen is tagged, or when the antigen is attached with such antibody, then it become tasty for the phagocytes. Then phagocyte will come and they will engulf it. We call that oppsonization. Okay. These two things means this skin one and this B cells again. So this skin and mucus and this B cells, they are what? They are act as a resident responder. So let me write resident responders. Now, why we call that resident responders means they are actually inside the body. The body is actually resident. And responders means they are response against the specific antigen. Okay. So these B cell, T cell and skin mucus are what? These are the resident responder as well. Moreover, what we have this dendritic cells, and we have this B cells and T cell. This dendritic cell and B cell and T cell, they are actually sometimes involved in what? They are involved in the inflammation. So let me write. They are involved sometime in the inflammation. Okay. Inflammation is actually a process in which, what is inflammation? Inflammation is actually when any part of the body, when it become red, or when it become swollen, or due to this swollen and redness, such part of the body or such area will feel, we feel pain on that area. This is called actually inflammation. So in the inflammation, these kind of the cells and these kind of the cells are involved. And we have some other thing which we call it cell coorpuration. So in cell coorpuration, what things we have involved? We have involved, these tissue cells, and we have, this self and non-self antigen. These two things are actually involved in cell coorpuration. So let me write, they are involved in what? They are involved in the cell coorpuration. Now, what does it mean, cell coorpuration? Cell coorpuration means that, if this dendritic cell, granelucytes and macrophages, natural killer cell, if we see this, so they are usually, interacted with this self and non-self antigen. Whenever they are interacted, so we call that cell coorpuration. So both are actually usually interacted with each other. That's why we call that cell and coorpuration. So, okay, so that's actually, our host defense system. So that's all things that we are going to explain in much more detail. So we talked, a host defense system. Now next we have another basic things which are usually happen in our basic immunology, means which is actually the part of our this video lecture. That's about the white blood cells. This innate immunity, if we talked about the host system, so what we have innate and adaptive. So among them there are some cells which we usually call that white blood cells. Okay, each of the cells we have nutrophils, basophils. Okay, actually, inside our blood, if we see our blood, so it is red in color. So it is due to hemoglobin, and it is some kinds of the proteins. So inside the, if we see, so what we have, let's suppose this is a tube. If you ask me a question that where is actually the white blood cell, where we see the white blood cell in our blood, where we see the white blood cell. So the answer is that, let's suppose we take a tube. Inside the tube, we loaded what? We loaded the blood sample. Now, after loading the blood sample, then we centrifugate it. What? We centrifugate it. Now, here are what? Let's suppose here these red one representing that they contain the blood. After the centrifugation, that what we have a white Buffy coat is appear in the, this upper portion is, let's suppose, serum. And this lower one are the red cells. These are what? These are the white portion, which we usually call that Buffy coat. Buffy coat. Now here inside the Buffy coat, they contain what? They contain the WBC, neutrophil, eosinophils, monocytes, lymphocytes, B cell, T cells. All these kinds of things are actually involved in the Buffy coat. So now here another questions arise that where are actually the blood cells are mature? You know, actually it is what? It is the part of the blood cells. These are what? These are actually the part of the blood cells. Now then, where actually the blood cells are, we can say that where it actually derived, or where it actually mature, or where we can obtain each of the blood cells. We can obtain it from the bone marrow. Usually we obtain it from the bone marrow and from the thymus. Although there are some other organ and tissues although there are some organ and tissues are present that which have the blood cells, but these are the so common. Inshallah, we'll be talking in other video lecture. Okay. Bone and thymus have the ability to produce blood cells, which we usually call that hematopoiesis. They can actually involve in the formation of the blood cells, which we call that what? Which we call that hematopoiesis. Hemato means blood. Poiesis means process. Those process in which the blood cells are formed inside the bone marrow and thymus, we call it hematopoiesis. Once the blood cells are formed from here, so then they will be, released out, and after that they will get matured. When the pathogens are internalized, then they will get mature and kill them. So each hematopoiesis, they have what? They have the white blood cell as well. So among them, some of them are distributed in the innate and some of them are distributed in the adaptive. So in adaptive, what we have, as I told you, that they have the B cell and T cell. B and T cells. On that side, they have what? They have the, macrophages. They have dendritic cells. They have granelucytes, nutrophils, eosinophils, these kinds of the cell, monocytes they have. Okay. Now let me one important thing about that. Whenever those blood cells which are actually released out from the bone marrow and train inside the bone marrow, means design inside the bone marrow, mature inside the bone marrow, then they will be released out, and they can kill every kinds of the pathogen, and each cells are usually involved in the innate immunity. And those cells which are actually formed and mature inside the bone marrow, but they don't have the ability to distinguish. They are present, but whenever they are trained, mature against the pathogen, then they will take a longer period of time. Some of them, B cell and T cell and dendritic and macrophage, some of them are usually resides in what? Are usually resides in the tissue, are usually reside in the organ. Means at that area, some of the cells are also reside at that area. So at that area, when they are stay for a longer period of time, then here the cells are mature as well. So when the cells are mature at that area, then such cell have the quick response against the antigen. Okay, so that's all about the basic overview of the immunology, the basic things about the immunity, the basic things of the immunology. Once you get the idea about that, then the rest of the video, which is also regarded with the immunology, which is also regarded with the immunity, will be very easy for you. Okay, I hope you understand. If there is something missing, so then write it into a comment. If you have any kind of question, you can also write it into a comment. Inshallah, in the next video lecture, we are going to talk about organ, tissue, system, means these kind of the things that are usually responsible in our immunity. If you like this video, so make sure to hit the like button, share this video, and also subscribe the channel to get more interesting videos, lecture like that, and also stay tuned. Thank you so much.